I had 38 of 60 symptoms that were on a Lyme checklist. And I ended up in heart failure. And I saw 12 doctors within these couple of months that everything was going haywire. And not a single one of them took my tick bite seriously and would consider any further testing, would consider that the initial infection had never cleared, would consider that ticks, who we know transmit tons of diseases, could have transmitted something else to me in that bite, something that would have needed an additional kind of treatment than doxycycline. Nobody, not a single one. And they did not express curiosity, and they just shut me down. And it was kind of like, it's in your head.
It's all in your head. If you have ever heard those words after seeking medical advice, only to be left with no answers, doctor after doctor, visit after visit, and you just really start believing those words. It's all in your head. Just let that sit there for a moment. Just let that resonate with you, how that feels in your body. And if that's you, you're one of many people, millions of people who struggle with chronic illnesses, autoimmune conditions with no answers, or difficulty in diagnosing or even treating conditions because of widely held beliefs in the medical system, right? But where does that leave you? I imagine it leaves you frustrated, angry, maybe even abandoned or worse. But at some point, you sit there and you realize you have to turn that pain into purpose, or traumas into triumphs, as we talk about here on Holistically Speaking. Dana Parrish has been there, and she is a chart-topping songwriter who's written music for some of the biggest names out there. She was living her dream in the music industry, at the top of your game, Dana, and then at some point the world came crashing down on you. A tick bite. And I understand this myself because I've been through that with Lyme's disease. Changed your life in a way where it almost killed you, but it also led you to find answers. And this is a topic I have been wanting to have on Holistically Speaking for the longest time. I'm so glad you're here sharing this because you are such a wealth of information. And, I feel like it's being heard. I feel heard because I've been through that. And I was at a position in my life at 13 where I got Lyme's and had no answers back then in the 80s, right? But you've been through far worse. And I really think it's part of your journey that's that power to purpose. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. Thank you.
Well, let's get right into it. I feel like I know you forever. We were talking for a few minutes before, and your story is just so powerful. And I don't think we ever really realize what's going to happen in our lives. We have this trajectory. We're on this path, like you were with your career working in the music industry, and then suddenly it's like, boom, like crash. And how did that happen for you? Can we go back just to share the story?
Absolutely. It was 10 years ago. And I was living in Manhattan, and I went to my friend's wedding in New Jersey. It's always New Jersey, right? It's like always New Jersey, Westchester, New Hampshire. But it's not really. It's just the stereotype is that it's those places, but very common there. And I got a tick bite at my friend's wedding, and I came home back to the city a couple of days later, and I felt it was July 4th weekend. So the first thing is when you have a summer cold, think Lyme. That's really important to say up front. I did not think Lyme, even though I grew up in New Jersey and I had a little bit of knowledge about Lyme. It wasn't more than, knowing that if you get a tick bite and a rash, that's a diagnostic, tool for Lyme. So I ended up getting really, really sick when I came back with a severe summer flu. My neck hurt, my head hurt. I had a hard time waking up. It was like this deep comatose like sleep that I'd never experienced before. And that went away over the course of a couple of days. But then I got out of the shower on a Saturday, a few days later, and I had a little bit of a rash and a bite in the middle. And I knew that was Lyme, walked over to urgent care. And that was the beginning of my complete and utter nightmare. I had no idea that my life was going to completely blow up at that point. I was told, it's Lyme. Don't Google it. Don't be one of those crazy Lyme people. Literally, that's what the urgent care doc said to me, which I thought was a very strange thing to say. Really got my attention, and it concerned me. Went and picked up 3 weeks of antibiotics, which was doxycycline, and I was told I would be fine and to just move on with my life. And I was heading to LA the next day for a writing trip, and I asked them numerous times, should I put it off? Should I cancel? I can go in a couple of weeks. It's not a big deal. No, she even said, like, you can drink wine with it. Well, I had like this severe crushing headache this week. I had meningitis, I found out later. And so I took the 3 weeks of doxy. I just felt very tired, but I didn't feel very ill. And then a couple months later, I woke up. My breast was in severe pain and it was swollen. I went to the doctor immediately. She thought I had breast cancer. She sent me to an oncologist that day at Mount Sinai. He said, it's not cancer, but I don't know what it is. It's really weird, but I do cancer and you don't have cancer, and goodbye. So I kept getting shuttled around from doctor to doctor. I had rashes all over. I had burning, painful rashes you could see like all over my chest, going down my arm from where the tick bite was. There was just a line that went all the way down. It wasn't infected. Nobody knew what that was from.
Mm.
And then I got severe, severe body pain to the point where I convinced a physiatrist, which is a person who does like physical, people confuse it with psychiatry. It's a guy that does like sports medicine. I convinced him to give me a chest wall MRI because I was like, I'm pretty sure I have lymphoma. Like I'm pretty sure something is behind my chest wall that's causing all this pain. And there wasn't. It was just this whole inflammatory response that people get when they get these infections. Doctor to doctor to doctor, over the course of 5 months, severe weakness, couldn't lift a fork, my arms stopped working, couldn't walk my dog, light and sound sensitivity, severe anxiety, depression, and insomnia, suicidal ideation, every single thing you could imagine.
Hmm.
I had 38 of 60 symptoms that were on a Lyme checklist, and I ended up in heart failure. And I saw 12 doctors within these couple of months that everything was going haywire. And not a single one of them took my tick bite seriously and would consider any further testing, would consider that the initial infection had never cleared, would consider that ticks, who we know transmit tons of diseases, could have transmitted something else to me in that bite, something that would have needed an additional kind of treatment than doxycycline. Nobody, not a single one. And they did not express curiosity, and they just shut me down. And it was kind of like, it's in your head. The thing with me was, when I went into heart failure, there's really no arguing that. And then it's, well, but we don't know why. Could it be from the tick bite? No. Why? Because I went to medical school. This is the kind of stuff that I would hear.
Yeah, I think what we're finding out, and especially in this day and age, especially as we are doing more in the world with integrative medicine, integrative approaches with the Western and the Eastern, and I prefer to work with doctors like that, even in my own practice, is that
for sure
you got to be your own healthcare advocate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
It's not just taking the word of what the doctor says. And I'm not saying that medical doctors don't know what they're talking about, but the ones who are more progressive and are open to the possibilities that maybe they don't have the answer are the ones I actually would want to trust more.
Oh, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And I would say that they don't know what they're talking about when it comes to complex chronic illness in the mainstream. And I agree with you 100%. If you know you have a tick bite, you need, then you have symptoms, you need a specialist. Like, there's no question. And yes, if you have all these weird, like, new onset of psychiatric physical symptoms, or even just not all of them, but some of them, and they're not explained by things that make sense, integrative functional medicine, Lyme specialists trained by ILADS, ILADS.org. Those are the doctors that you want to see. Just save yourself the trouble of going down all the different specialties and mainstream medicine, because they're just simply not trained to evaluate patients for infections, very commonly that are causing autoimmune, psychiatric, and neurologic diseases. And I would also add toxic mold to the big black hole in medicine that mainstream doctors don't know anything about. They're not taught about any of this stuff. And it's crazy to me.
And that's an area that you and I were just talking about before, about the just how severe mold can actually be, and the kind of
Oh, yeah.
complications it can really cause with our immune systems.
Mold is used in biowarfare. Mold is used, mycotoxins are used for a drug called Celcept, which people take it's an organ rejection drug, like it's an anti-rejection drug.
Mm.
So it's so immune suppressive that they use a certain mycotoxin to make that drug. It can cause dementia. It can cause death. People get infections in their lungs. Brittany Murphy allegedly died from, and so did her husband, from mold toxicity. But it causes severe neuropsych illness, severe physical illness, autoimmune diseases, the same stuff. The body can only express itself in so many ways. And these are the big things that nobody is talking about in the mainstream that are the most important things to be looking at when you don't have other answers that make sense. Like, stop drugging your patient's symptoms and find out what the root cause is, and then treat that. And let's see how people do.
And I feel that that's one thing that we're seeing more of as well, is that we're trying to get to the root cause of things. Those of us who are looking at things more progressively, not just trying to give you a diagnosis and tell you this is what it is and this is how you treat it. But again, I think this really goes back to being that healthcare advocate for yourself, asking questions, because there are times when, especially with the older generation, there's such a trust of the doctor-patient relationship.
Yes.
That we'll just do whatever, just do whatever they say,
Yeah.
because asking questions or researching online or going down the WebMD hole, or just people not even knowing how to really use the internet to that capacity. I mean, anytime you just Google something, you're going to get 20, 30 different more things that it could be, right?
I totally agree. Google shows you what the establishment wants you to see. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
So you have to look at the primary literature yourself. And I know that sounds like a tall order, but go to PubMed, go to Google Scholar, and put the condition in, put infections in, see if they can cause it. Look at Lyme, look at Bartonella, look at toxic mold, mycotoxins. You will not believe what you find. People really do need to be encouraged to do their own research, but listen to their intuition. If something doesn't feel right, for me, that was what guided me. I knew nothing about any of this at that time. Nothing. I just knew that I trusted my instincts. And it wasn't sitting right with me. Why would I have a tick bite, be completely healthy, and then this whole thing explodes my life and my health? How does that make any sense? It doesn't to me.
Yeah.
But to them, there's just no curiosity.
Now, you wrote a book a couple years ago with your doctor,
Yeah.
a doctor that you said saved your life, Phillips, Dr. Phillips. And this the book it did come out of an article you wrote where you interviewed Dr. Phillips, and then the book Chronic was born. So that happened in 2021.
Yes.
And here you are today, you're still talking about it. So I'm curious, and I want to talk about the book because I think, where was this book when I needed it? Again, I was a kid. It probably wouldn't have been a book I read at 13, but maybe it could have been a book my parents read when I was going through Lyme disease.
Yeah.
Right. So what's Dana's goal now, even with the book out there a couple years? Where are you looking to go with things?
My biggest mission in life is still to get this message out, to help people. There are before COVID, okay, there were about 50 million people in America who had autoimmune disease. Now, all of those people have a cause for their autoimmune disease, and most of them never find out what it is. And most of them are put on long-term palliative drugs like immune suppressants, psych drugs, pain medications, because the body and the mind are connected. That's another thing that's important to say, is that it's not in your head. A lot of these infections are literally neurologic infections. So they're in your brain, or they're causing brain inflammation, both. So as Dr. Phillips always says, if you have neuropathy and your hands and feet are tingly and numb, you could have numbness in the part of your brain that controls your emotion. And that's why people get flat and depressed and anhedonia. So you have to just think of these things as one, and the body as one. So at this point, I'm channeling all of my efforts into, I've been hosting a podcast for at least a year and a half that I love, for a foundation that I'm on the board of called Bay Area Lyme Foundation. And the podcast is called Integrative.
Oh, that's brilliant.
I love interviewing all these brilliant scientists and clinicians from uh, the Lyme world to COVID world to the longevity researchers. I just interviewed Matt Caberline, who founded the Dog Aging Project. He's a biologist and he's like a hero of mine. So it's been really, really fun and interesting to be able to talk to all these brilliant people and people like you who have their own stories and their own journeys and are journalists. And I love it so much. So that's one really important thing that I'm doing to get this information out. And I also just restarted my Substack where I want to funnel. I get so much medical information and I get a lot of intel from talking to all these people. And it doesn't always make it into the podcast. And sometimes people don't want certain things attached to their names because, there's a lot of politics involved in medicine, as you know. And this is where I am now channeling a lot of my efforts. So my Substack, which is danaparish.substack.com.
We're going to put all that in the podcast notes.
Cool.
And just to remind folks, if you're kind of like, what's happening here? I mean, Dana has this amazing book. I want to talk about this too. Chronic, the hidden cause of the autoimmune pandemic and how to get healthy again. That's a book you co-wrote with your doctor who saved your life, Dr. Stephen Phillips. And then of course, the Substack, we're going to share that link as well, because look, for you, and I love this about you, you're here to help other people.
Yes.
And I think a lot of times we find, where was this when I was going through it?
Yes.
I want to save people the trouble of this happening. Because if this had never happened, I imagine you would still be doing the work that you were doing in the music industry. Who knows what would be going?
No question. And at that point, it just seemed that, I still continued writing for a while. I just felt this calling that was much bigger than anything I've ever. I was born to sing. I was born to write songs. There was no question I was going to do that. I never thought that I would not do that full time. And I was very fortunate that I was able to do it full time. I was able to support myself as an artist from the time, a couple of years out of college. I was so, so lucky to be able to, and so grateful to be able to do that. But then this happened. And then it awakened me to how much suffering there is, how many people are not getting help. And when I was writing the Huffington Post column about it, which again, I expected nothing. I did it just really because I wanted to raise some awareness. I didn't think anybody would care or read it. I heard from people from Africa, literally, who saw my personal story about what happened to me on a message board on Facebook. Literally, I was contacted by a nurse in Ghana named Joe. We put a story in the book. It's one of my favorite things that happened through all of this. He wrote me this awesome letter, and he said to me, there are a lot of ticks in Africa. And we have caves, and there are ticks. They carry so many diseases. And he said, there are these prayer camps where thousands of us are sent that have neuropsychiatric issues. And our elders tell us that we are possessed and we need to go and pray it away. You can Google all this. It's fascinating. There are articles about it. He said, I am now convinced that they all have Lyme or some version of it because he got my protocol. He got my Lyme protocol from Dr. Phillips from me. I sent him, he asked me, like, how are you treating? A doctor in the hospital has agreed to treat me if you just tell me what to do. I sent him what I did. He did it. He got totally better from all of his neuropsych stuff. And then he had this whole awakening. He went on to teach doctors at his hospital. And this is the most gratifying thing. It just goes to show that you never know who you are going to help, who you're going to touch when you put this stuff out there in a sincere and genuine way.
Yeah, when you come from a place of authenticity and integrity and you just share your truth.
Yes.
You never know who you can touch, move, and inspire. That's really what this podcast is about. I imagine what you're doing with Integrative, by the way, I love the name of that podcast. I'm such a girl that loves wordplay, holistically speaking. You never know who's tuning in. And if it touches one life and can make a difference of something that they haven't thought about, that's what this is all about. So listen, if this podcast episode with Dana is or has touched, moved, and inspired you at all, or you know somebody who needs to hear what is being shared here, please pay it forward, pass it along. Don't forget to subscribe and download this and just pay it forward, because that's really what this is all about. And that's why I hold space for guests like yourself to share their stories and do it in such an authentic, with full integrity. So thank you for being you.
Thank you.
Your Substack is something that you are relaunching, which is there a love for writing? Obviously you wrote music,
Yeah.
but writing the written word,
Love.
how's that different than music?
To me, it's not. It's like personal and universal messages. The first Substack that I put out, I did an interview with Chris Christopherson's wife. Chris had a famous story that has been totally buried in the press for the last few, like he just passed away, unfortunately. Yeah. Nobody is talking about this. Chris had Lyme-induced Alzheimer's. And in 2017, he was basically sent home to his house. He was told by the doctors, like, you're never going to get better, and basically just sent home to die. His wife did not give up. She knew that there was a cause. And she kept seeking, and she found a great Lyme doctor, discovered that he had Lyme, started treating him. And in 30 days on antibiotics and a couple of other treatments that are, under that umbrella, sort of, he got better, and he went back on. It was on the cover of Rolling Stone, and she said it was like, the son of a bitch is back. That was the caption. And then I just posted a story yesterday about my mom who had breast cancer, and she almost didn't go through treatment because it would cause a very high rate of neuropathy in her hands and feet, like 84%. And my friend, who was an oncologist at Duke, sent me a little known study from Japan that showed if you freeze your hands and your feet, your rate of neuropathy goes down to low 20s. So it convinced my mom to go through with life-saving treatment. I should say, she's a piano player. She's been playing her whole life. And she just thought, if I can't play anymore, my life is going to be terrible. So she went beyond like the lumpectomy and did the whole treatment, which was much safer for her. And she's 6 years out now. So that was my second story. So all these like little known health things and all these little known stories that I feel need to be told to help other people is where I feel I can be most helpful to the world.
Oh, and thank you for that. I mean, the way that we learn by becoming those healthcare advocates, a lot of times it's from us going through our own thing. Like I think about, just for me, one of the battles I've been facing is that I have TMJ. I had TMJ surgery when I was 15. What do you know? You trust the doctors. Now I'm falling into it again, where it led to sleep apnea. And there's all these different things that we need to really say, okay, this is my journey. Like I need to PubMed the hell out of myself so that hopefully I can save somebody else from going through this. Like, isn't it all about being a collective? Isn't it all about being community on this planet? Like, if we can help somebody in some way just from our own story, that's what the storytelling's all about.
Absolutely.
Whatever you're doing, it could help someone else. And it has, obviously, from what you shared. And I think about my own mom's journey. My mom, who I shared with you earlier, was being treated for a parasite that, again, she was hearing that story, it's in your head,
Yeah.
And with all the information that comes out and at you, because it's total information overload, you could self-diagnose yourself to the day is done 20 different times in one day.
Yeah.
And it can be maddening.
Yes.
It can really be maddening. So you actually shared something, and I want to touch on this, real-time lab. Tell me about that real quick.
Real-time lab is a really good lab to diagnose toxic mold exposure. So it's a urine mycotoxin test. And I can just tell you from speaking to experts in the field, for example, Neil Nathan, who I just interviewed, people know him. He has a best-selling book called Toxic. He's an MD as well. He said to me last week, I've analyzed every single test. This is the best one that we have. And Medicare covers it. So I just learned that last week or the week before, and I was really, really happy. These things get expensive, as you know, when you're, again, like when you get out of the mainstream, you start getting these tests that are more sensitive a lot of times, but they're more accurate. And so they're really important to do. And it's great to know that insurance will cover some of them. So that's a good lab. And I have no affiliation with any lab or anything, but I should just say that, again, save yourself the time and all the rabbit holes.
Yeah. And what about now with your journey with Lyme's? Like, where are you today with your own health?
Very fortunate. I mean, it took me almost a year to recover under Dr. Phillips' care. And I worked with him, and I work with a Chinese medicine doctor in New York City named Dr. Zhang, the Zhang Clinic. Some people will probably know him. it was very important for me to do both of those treatments. I really believe that I don't give enough credit to the Chinese medicine aspect of it, but I think that they synergized really nicely together. And there's multiple, different protocols people can try. I have been well for the last 9 years, and I have had flares,
Yeah.
like a lot of people do. I'm pretty quick to treat for a couple of weeks. And it doesn't always mean that I take antibiotics. Sometimes I'll take oil of oregano, things that are available over the counter. I like an herb called liposomal artemisinin. I mention this because every time I talk about it, people want to know specifically, what are you taking? Always check with your doctor. I have to say that, because it's not just because something is natural or over the counter does not mean you should take it. So,
and it's your journey. This is your journey. That's something I definitely want to. I definitely want to back you up on that one, because it's bio-individuality, as we call it, and
absolutely,
what Dana needs is not the same as what Hilary needs.
Exactly.
Definitely check and find your tribe that can help you. Like,
yes,
build your army of medical, holistic, functional, integrative, whatever it might be. It's finding that right army that will support you on that journey. I felt better when I realized I'm building that, like I'm building this group that will be part of this thing for me, rather than this doctor, then that doctor, and this opinion and that opinion. You're just like, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah, I totally hear you.
Yeah.
Once I found the two doctors, I knew that they were the ones that were going to get me better. I just knew it in my heart. I had that complete innate sense of peace about both of them, and they were happy to work together. There was no ego about any of that. And then I just put my head down and did the treatments, and I didn't listen to anybody else. And I was so lucky to integrate into the Lyme community. They are some of the most extraordinary people I've ever met, from every single country, from every walk of life. They're young, they're older, they're kids. I mean, I love these people so much, and they have supported me and the journey to my own recovery and writing the book. And they've just, I couldn't have imagined like that there was this whole other world of people out there. And I hope that, being able to pay it forward means something to them, because one of the things that was the worst for me was not being able to find many recovery stories. And when you're that sick, all you want to know is, can I get better? Will I get better? What's it going to take? Or should I just quit and just give up? Because that is something that we all go through when we get sick like that. I felt like if I am lucky enough to get better, I'm just going to tell everybody for the rest of my life, hold on, there's hope. Look at me. I got better, so can you. And that's why I'm here.
That hit me, because it really is part of the human condition, is we just want to know, is there a light at the end of this tunnel?
Yes.
Is there hope? I mean, just tell me, is there somebody out there that we've seen the success story or the rags to riches? I mean, we hear about that. I'm sure you're used to that, working in the music industry, making it in the industry, right?
Sure.
You want to hear the success story of maybe somebody that was living in their car and then later they had the huge success in the industry.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
the same thing with our health. Like, you want to know, if you're going through a struggle, please tell me there's hope, right? Find that one person that it worked for, just so I know I have a glimmer.
Absolutely agree. And it was very hard to find. I mean, even now it's hard to find, because what people will tell you, I met a Lyme doctor before I started to work with Dr. Phillips, because I was actually on vacation when I got diagnosed in California, and I was in heart failure at that point. I was really, really sick. And he said to me, don't stay too long on the message boards, because you'll think nobody gets better, because the ones who get well leave. And I will never forget those words. And I totally got it. It made complete sense to me. And that was when I decided, if I get better, I'm going to be the person who stays, so to speak, on those message boards. And I'm going to be the one to give the lifeline, because nobody was giving it to me. And I really, really need it.
That is powerful.
Yeah.
That is powerful. You're right. People are like, I'm better now. I don't need this place. But no, you're the one that's really needed now.
Yes.
Right. So thank you for continuing to show up. I guess I could say that, not even knowing you really for an extended amount of time and sharing that kind of space, I would just say, let me speak for folks when I say thank you for showing up. Thank you for continuing to show up. It's people like you that are making a difference and creating the space to touch, move, and inspire for those who really need it most, where what Dana needed, you're showing up for yourself now,
Yeah,
right?
thanks.
And others. So again, we're going to share everything, including the book Chronic, the hidden cause of the autoimmune pandemic and how to get healthy again. Dana's Substack, also the real-time lab, and anything else. I mean, you might pass some stuff along to me before we actually drop this podcast episode. So we'll have it all in the podcast notes for you, and just anything that you can do to help yourself heal, to pass it along. That's what we're here about on Holistically Speaking. Let's have a little fun though, shall we?
Sure.
Can we have a little fun?
Yes.
All right. So I do this with all my guests. I play a rapid fire game. I've been writing down some words that you've mentioned during this conversation. I'm just going to throw one word out to you. Come back with the first word that comes to mind.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
All right. Here we go. Got to have a little fun. There's always humor in the healing, right? All right. Here we go. Chronic.
Book.
Might as well market yourself, right?
I mean, it's just what I thought.
Right. Good stuff. Mold.
Death.
Music.
Life.
Toxic.
Walls. Air.
Autoimmune.
Fixable.
Tick.
Dirty needle.
Labs.
Bioweapons. I think of when you say labs, I think COVID.
Healthy.
Healthy, I think sun and light and forward motion.
Love that. Wellness.
Evergreen.
Community.
Love.
Yeah, we're going to end it right there. I love that. I love that. And that word to me is everything you've been sharing. And the fact that you put the nice big exclamation point on the end with love is totally shows who you are. So thank you, Dana. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I also want to give you a moment to share some final thoughts with our listeners. So
if you are suffering and you don't have answers, understand that they probably exist, and gather your loved ones or a loved one. It doesn't even have to be a family member, because I know sometimes they are not the ones that, sometimes they don't believe you either. I know how that is. I hear from tons and tons of people who their families don't even believe them. Grab a friend, bring them with you to the doctor, have them advocate if you are not well enough to do it. Take notes. Don't be afraid to push back, ask why. Always be polite to doctors, but don't be intimidated. Just show up ready, come with a list of problems that you are having, and ask them to help you solve them. And if they can't, and you realize you are hitting a brick wall, move on. You don't have to stay with them. A lot of doctors will do telemed with you. It's not that you have to travel all over the country. Ticks carry many other infections. So I want to also put that out there. You need to be tested for things like Bartonella, Babesia, Lyme, other infections. You also need to think about COVID. COVID causes reactivation of Lyme and Bartonella. We know this. And EBV, this has been well documented and published. You have to start thinking about things from the root cause, and toxic mold, another big one. Just don't forget, when you're not getting answers, those are the three big ones that you need to think about and have them properly ruled in or ruled out.
Yeah, thank you. Just make that really the exclamation, is do the work. Yep. Don't get lazy about it. A little extra time could save your life.
I totally agree. It saved mine, so I'm living proof.
Great. Thank you so much, Dana.
Thank you.
If what we shared during this conversation on the Holistically Speaking podcast struck a chord with you, do yourself a favor and connect with Dana. The links to connect with her for social media, Substack, or even to grab a copy of her book, Chronic, are all in the notes of this episode. And if you or someone you know may find that this episode can be helpful to them, really consider paying it forward. Community and support is such a big part of the Holistically Speaking journey. And be sure to hit that like or subscribe button Wherever your headphones take you, even leave a thoughtful response, a rating, a review. It helps other people find this episode when they might need it most. And of course, you can sign up to receive that Brain Candy newsletter. It is sent directly to your inbox from me to you every week to share the sweetest ways to be kind to your mind. Holistically Speaking is edited by Two Market Media with music by Lipone Redding and of course supported by you. So thank you for spending your day with me. One final note. You have the ability to be your own healthcare advocate, to get to the root of what is causing you upset, to take your life back, to live optimally. And when you find that you're in doubt, know that there are people that will support you. I'm one of them. I love you. I believe in you. And I'm sending hugs your way. Be well.
I know